We'll call the meeting to order for Wicomico County Council, open work session for budget session 2025, April 29th, 2025.
Hello, Pam Olin, Finance Director.
John Monar, Director of IT.
If I may start on a couple things that kind of impact every department.
Sure.
So, as we described in the budget message, positions were given raises at 2 periods of time in the budget. We are increasing the scale for those who are on the M class as of the first full pay period in July by 3%. And then in January, in the first full pay period in January, we're moving people an additional 2%. In some of the cases where, but your position control document, because we have to reflect on that document, the top dollar amount that we are going to spend, the position control document reflects the ending number that might happen in January. It is not the number that may be started in July, due to the fact that we have split these up and done the raises in 2 parts. In addition, some of the bigger raises for people to get on the, get to market, we have split those approximately 50%. But if you have specific questions about individual people, or individual titles, I can get back to you on those. I have supporting documentation for how those are split. The other piece that impacts every department is that health insurance is going up by 11%. And so that is reflected in the departments. So health insurance across the board is going up. So for the most part, the only reason why it may not be an exact 11% is because the mix of utilization has changed since the last fiscal year. We do that based on who is actually taking at the point in time we create this budget, and we also do it based on estimates for vacancies. So from there,
What's the purpose of splitting the raises?
Part of it is a financial impact. It does give some savings to be able to do because you're only doing the 2% for a half year, you only have to pay 1% in fiscal 26. That is part of the reasoning. The other part was we decided that the COLA, right now inflation when we were doing this was just under 3%, so we were going to give the inflation piece, but we wanted to give a scale increase, but we did that in January. So basically, since we've implemented the scale, fiscal 25 is the first year that people have actually moved kind of to the right on the scale for those who are on the M scale. So if you were hired, I'll use myself as an example. I was hired at the beginning of the M scale, and I've gone just straight up the scale. I have not gained any longevity on that scale. I have basically stayed because all we've done is move the scale up. We haven't given anybody any additional longevity time on their scale. So that was the purpose for doing also the split, is that we're doing it 3% and 2%. So the scale is moving up 3% and people are moving over 2%.
You don't have this off the top of your head. What is the total cost of raises for the 3% and the 2%?
I can get that to you. I don't have that with me.
I understand. Could you get that to me?
Yep.
For everybody.
Yep. Let me start a list of questions, because
Okay.
if I don't start a list of questions, I will not remember. So may I ask a clarifying question on your question? So again, are you looking for just those who are on the M scale and getting the 5%, or are you looking for a total, those who are on the correctional scale, those who are on the FOP scale, those who are...
I'll leave the FOP out of it because they're under contract, right?
Okay, so you would like the total value of raises for correctional and M scale employees?
I don't know what M means, but anyway.
It's everybody else.
Okay.
I mean, we have 3 scales. We have an M scale, which is where, John and myself are.
Right.
And then we have a correctional scale, and then we have the FOP scale.
So you have to leave the correction, the
FOP scale out because it's under contract, you got to do whatever the contract says, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the rest of them, I guess, is.
Okay, so,
And then Pam, don't forget the sheriff's office, state's attorney, and
Yep.
courts got their full 5.
yeah, so we did,
They getting their full 5 at one time, or?
so they have been, because of the way the change that council agreed to, we just gave them 5% in their scale for the sheriff's office, for their M scale and their command staff. And for the circuit court and state's attorney, we just said, here's 5% on your value, and then if council keeps the dollar amount that's in here, they have the ability to split that 5% as long as somebody is still within the scale. So ultimately, when council passes a budget, whatever dollar amount you have in salaries for state's attorney, that'll be the dollar amount that they're allowed to allocate amongst their employees, as an example.
I was a little confused as to why you were doing step raises anyway across the board like that. I always thought the step raises were usually something that you would be for tenure or satisfactory,
So we don't have a
job
performance evaluation process yet. We're still working on that with HR. But again, I have no problem using myself as an example. I'm easy to find on the scale. I'm the only title that way. But I have now been in this role for 5 years. And in this role, I'm still looking at low to mid, basically, on the scale, saying that I have not gained any tenure here in this role, because all we've done is taken the scale straight up. So I am not moving to being closer to the midpoint. I'm not moving to be closer to the end point, because all we've ever done in the positions for over the last several years since I've been involved with the budgets is basically take the scale up. We've never moved anybody for being here in the position. And it's only people who are in the positions. So again, we budgeted at midpoint for vacant positions. And so depending on hire and all that kind of stuff, they would not get, most likely would not get longevity depending on their hire date. So the 2% is considered longevity, that you have been here with the county and you have then aged, kind of like the step scale for the federal government. As you are here longer, you move to the right on the scale. On the FOP scale, as you've been here longer, you move to the right on the scale. We have not moved people to the right on the scale for the other positions. We're doing that.
Well, for employees that are in the higher steps, I always thought that any increases that you might have given, any increases that you might have given would be maybe every 3 years as opposed to every single year. Are we going to continuously just give additional steps every year?
Well, again, if we're moving the scale, and that's what we've been giving COLAs, is what we've been giving.
Right.
So as the scale's gone up, we've given people. It is going to be budget-based as to whether or not in the future we can move people to the right on the scale. At this moment, we believe we can accomplish that for fiscal '26.
It confuses me. I'm not really familiar with it because I certainly don't deal with it day to day.
Again, in private industry, you hire somebody in a total, but in a governmental setting, you are typically rewarded for staying longer in the position and moving to the right on a scale.
Yeah, well, and the only thing I know is that in a government position, usually based on different steps, usually it's if it's like step maybe 1 through 3, it might be every year, but not when you get into the higher, the more long-term.
Well, but again, in 5 years, we haven't moved anybody to the right, so.
I can't tell you how that's relevant because I don't think I could get it if we were here for a half an hour. I don't think I could
Okay,
get that.
so anyways.
I think your position is really hard because there's only one of you. So for example, if we have a roads person and let's say they're making $40,000 a year, and then the next year we move up the scale, so now that bottom is no longer 40, it's now 41. And let's say the next year we move it up and that bottom is 42. So now that person's at 42, they're still at the bottom of the scale. If we bring in somebody else who has 0 days with the county, they're going to come in at 42,000, the same as what the person who has been here for 2 years.
Right.
So when we move them up, we're also kind of moving them over, so maybe they're making 42.7, and then that new person coming in is making 42. So.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's hard for one position, but when you look at it, when you have multiple positions,
Yeah.
we're bringing in people at the same rate of somebody who's been here for 5 years. So that's why
Right.
taking it across this way helps that a little
You're
bit.
saying the reason why we have this issue right now is because every year we've just been bumping the whole scale up.
Correct.
And not letting it sit and people can move to the right.
Correct.
Exactly.
On the scale.
Right.
For
So
longevity.
I have hijacked John's time, but I figured that they were appropriate things to kind of tell you at the beginning because they kind of impacted every department. So now we're turning to you to ask any questions that you might have of IT.
Start? Glad you took time to come here, John. I guess the one thing is that you have significant increases in your salaries throughout the entire department, and we were kind of just wondering what the thought process was there. We don't work with your people every day, so we were kind of curious as what led to that.
So a little research behind it is looked at our biggest competitors, and one of our biggest competitors is Worcester County. And in my department in particular, we have our years of service. We start at 7, so we have quite an experienced staff that's been with our department for many years. One of our staff members is 34 years of service. I'm 26. So it was based on looking at who our biggest competitor is, how our scale compares to those positions in Worcester County, and finding the equivalent position with our department, calculating in our years of service from our staff members, and then looking at the midpoint of our M scales and trying to get those folks closer to that midpoint on our M scale. Because again, we're all sitting basically at the bottom of the scale. So when you looked at that, our positions and the equivalent positions with Worcester County, we compared them and we were drastically far behind. So that was the justification for it.
So in the position control document, I attempted, doesn't mean I was successful, but I attempted to try to give you guys a little key of positions that had some changes that aren't just the 5%. So most of his positions on his scale are in a light green color. That light green color means due to market conditions, Bolton review, or years of service, these positions we feel are underpaid, and thus we're recommending a higher increase than the 5%.
The other thing I'd like to add to that is our staff has stayed the same amount for many years. And in an organization our size, the typical IT staff member to employee is about 1 to 25 or 1 to 30. We're about 1 to 100. So now, I've never looked at growing our department just for the sake of growing government, okay? So what we've tried to do over the last years is look at technology, implement technology that lets us do more with less staff. Now, when you do that, your staff has to be highly trained and has to be very knowledgeable because you got to understand that technology, you got to be able to implement it effectively. So our staff members, they're trained in multiple different areas, and we do quite a bit of cross-training. So we ask a lot of them, and that's great. They're involved, they feel valued because they have responsibilities, and they're always learning. They're learning new technologies in my industry. That's what someone like me wants to be part of. So I think it's proper that we look at the market. We see who our competitors are, that if our staff decides, where are they going to go? People like to stay here on the shore, but they're looking local. That's where they're looking for. So we want to stay competitive. We want to treat our people that have been dedicated to the county for many, many years. They're valued employees. They have a lot of institutional knowledge. And I think it's something we all want to keep those folks that work and do a good job. We want to keep them here.
And overall, their total budget is actually going down. So.
Well, that may be capital too, right?
Well, they are spending less in capital, and yes, that is true.
Yeah.
But there is the ability of, there are trade-offs each year, and in this year, there is not need for the capital, there is need to value the employees that we have to try to maintain them.
Yes, go ahead.
John, thank you for being here.
Sure.
And making time to answer these questions. You say you've had a lot of longevity in your staff. Do you have any open positions?
No.
Okay.
No, we haven't had a change in a staff member in over 7 years.
That's good.
For you?
We have good staff.
Oh, but I know a lot of
And
people
actually,
that wish
the
they could
first-
say the same thing.
The person that came back actually used to work in our department. He left for a higher paying job. It didn't pan out, and we had somebody retire, and we brought him back, so.
Thank you.
I didn't have the same totals in Exhibit F for his department, for John's department, as I did in Exhibit B. So just as a side, I don't want to get into the weeds on that right now.
But Exhibit F will not foot to Exhibit B because of what I explained about the split year salaries. Because the raises are split, I'm having to show you the total dollar amount that 2020-09 requires us to put as to how much we're going to pay people. Or we would have to come back in January for a budget amendment on every person in the budget for doing a mid-year raise. So the salaries in the Exhibit B are the salaries with a 3 and a 2. The salaries on Exhibit F are the full raises that we're asking for, and that's across the board for every department. It'll be a rare department that you will actually be able to add up Exhibit F and make them tie. Even your department, county council, shouldn't tie because of having people on the M scale getting the 3+2. The county council will tie because you guys get the total dollar amount for the whole year. But your individual employees, we had to put them in at 3+2 on the Exhibit B, which is what ties to Munis. On Exhibit F, that is the final amount that they're going to get in the fiscal year, to avoid having to try to come back for a budget amendment on Exhibit F.
I would have thought Exhibit F would be higher, but you're saying it's lower?
It should be higher.
I don't know if I've got it right or not. Like I said, I have Exhibit B being 520,109, of course. And when I totaled F, I got about 515,397. So I don't know.
Well, there's other things in salaries. There could be overtime, there could be a leave payout, there's other things that are in the total salary number that is not on Exhibit F.
You include taxes in the total salary number, I
No,
guess?
taxes are, that's in benefits.
Okay.
The gross dollar amount is up in salaries. The amount that we have to pay for FICA is down in benefits.
So you're factoring overtime in the salaries?
Salaries includes overtime, includes leave payouts, includes,
He's talking about Exhibit B, not Exhibit F.
Right.
yeah,
Salaries in Exhibit B include,
yes. Salaries in
Miscellaneous.
Exhibit B will include things like leave payout, and depending on the department, it'll include part-time employees, it'll include premium overtime, it'll include shift differential, it'll include, and so you will, rarely if ever, will you be able to tie Exhibit B to Exhibit F.
Just want to make sure you knew what you were doing, because I know I don't always know.
So
One of us has to
I
be
will, again, I have made mistakes. I've come to you and told you that I've made a mistake, So, but we have had multiple people look at each individual person to make sure that they're in there at the amount that we feel that they're supposed to be in there, and that the totals then translate to what's on Exhibit B, which is what council is adopting.
Anybody else have questions? John, anything you want to add?
Uh,
Yes, you're over.
On the 12%, 15% raises here, are they going to be paid out at one time? Is that-
I would have to get you by title, because again, certain ones, so I know for a fact, because I just remember doing it, directors and deputy directors, I split those over 2 periods in most, if not all, departments. I can't remember for the individual requests so the other positions were requested by John for his department. I can't remember if I split them. I don't think I did, but I can get back to you on that.
I'll just say, the reason why our overall operating budget did go down this year is, it really depends on the fiscal year. We do a lot of subscription services now, especially for all our software. We used to buy software perpetually where it was a one-time buy, you had the license and you kept it forever. All right, so most of that model has gone away in the IT industry. So now everything is basically subscription services where you pay either every year, every 2 years, it depends. You get a good break sometimes if you do a 2-year contract, and it's worth doing that way. So some things that we paid this year, we don't have coming up next year. There's some also other hardware devices, firewalls, authentication servers that we were able to take care of this year that we don't have next year. So it kind of fluctuates year to year on what devices we need to replace based on our maintenance plan and what our subscription services, what their terms are. So we were able to make some savings this year based on some contracts that we were able to do for 2 years and save money, and then we don't have to buy those subscription services every year.
And because there's no additional fee, it's not like we're appropriating a second year. It is a 2-year term with a 1-year payment.
Correct, yep.
Yeah, I had misspoken. I said capital expenses, but actually I was talking about one-time operating, and your operating has gone down as well.
Yeah.
Now, your one-time operating in '24 was $42,000, and, last year and this year it's over $200,000. Do you anticipate that you might somehow or other in one day get back down to $42,000 on your one-time operating?
Possibly. It depends on, so it jumped up because we had some major hardware devices that we had to pay, and those are our one-time fees, and we had some more. I would think looking down the road, we've got a lot of those things taken care of over the last 2 years.
Yeah, right.
So we don't cycle those things out every 2 years. We try to do them some devices are every 5, some every 7. It depends on what they are. Mm-hmm. So certainly, if we can bring it down, I'll certainly be bringing it down.
Yeah, especially in IT.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's gone down from this year.
Yes, yep,
270 this year and 220 next year.
yep.
Hey, John.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have planning and zoning.
P&Z.
Mrs. Taylor? How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Good afternoon. So, for planning and zoning, one of the issues that we have associated with having 2020-09 and having to spell out dollar amounts by position, to be able to accomplish giving council a budget on a specific date, we have to set a cutoff date as to when positions were hired. Well, since the point in time that we set that cutoff date, planning and zoning has been successful enough in hiring an employee. Well, what that has done, though, unfortunately, means that I have a position in the position control document that doesn't have the right dollar amount for the next fiscal year because of, they were hired at a higher dollar amount. They're not going to be able to get the full raises that they should be getting next year with the 3% scale and the 2%. So I can get council what that financial impact is. It's not significant. It's about $3,000 total that, again, good problem to have. We were able to hire somebody. Bad problem is I have to set a date as to when I'm doing this by, and that position is now filled at a different dollar amount than what I have available for it in the fiscal '26 budget. So I will be supplying to council a request for a specific position to have the position control document go up, and there will be a small financial aspect that we are asking for. And then, going back to the fact that I make mistakes, we have another position that we're $300 off. Somehow, in all of the checks, we missed one, and they're not listed in the schedule by about $300. So I will get you those two pieces. And the other piece associated with,
What page is that on for planning and zoning?
planning and zoning is,
The 31 or 33.
I don't know why I don't have it marked. Thank you.
How much money are we talking about roughly for those two positions?
$3,300
3,300.
approximately.
Down.
Okay. Okay, so I will be getting you, and they may actually offset. I might have a third one that I have to do a change to, but again, that's the problem, is that because we give you a list, I have to set that list on a certain date. If we hire people at a different dollar amount, that list will change. I will say the other thing that is in planning and zoning is that we are on Exhibit E requesting a title change for one position and because that position, is that the one that you were just talking about?
Reactivate, new position, budget to midpoint.
This is a vacant.
Okay, so yeah, the long-range planner, we're activating it to midpoint because it's vacant. And that has been our policy, is to put it in the budget at the midpoint to allow us to have some flexibility in hiring. The other one is we're reactivating a position, and we would like to give planning and zoning the opportunity to have their own financial specialist. They have a lot of financial transactions in their department. So like corrections and like rec and parks, like the sheriff's office, those departments, like solid waste and roads, they all have their own person. They do dotted line report to finance, but this will give planning and zoning some additional financial support within their department, and it will also give them additional support for the numerous grants that they have. So council graciously provided us a grant employee last year, which does roll up under finance, but a lot of those grants do run through planning and zoning, and so to do the actual financial tracking, the grant position that we have in finance is one to try to help manage all grants, but to actually be able to track individual grants, it is helpful to have somebody who is responsible at the department level.
The reactivations that we're seeing, a lot of them, are these from when we cut the budget for vacancies over 2 years? 2 years or more?
Yes and no. So what that was last year, but some of these go back to it for a tracking purposes for Munis. There is a finite number. We're nowhere near that number, but there's a finite number of position numbers available to us. So for example, this position, that the chief fire protection, that's not a position that we are planning to use again. So why not retitle it, reactivate it, make it something that we need to use, and thus reuse something that's already on the books instead of creating something brand new and then having all of these other positions that are considered inactive in Munis. It works for us in the finance department for an administrative purposes to reactivate positions that are already created.
So you have two two different terms. One says reactivate budget to midpoint, the other one's reactivate new position. So what you're saying is you're actually reactivating a position and you're changing the title?
Yes.
Okay.
So this one is we're going from a chief of fire protection, we're reactivating that position, but we don't want a chief of fire protection. We want a senior department finance specialist. Thus, we're taking a position that we already have on the books and changing its title to something that we also already have on the books.
Okay.
But filling it with something that we need in the department not.
I was confused.
Yeah, again, I readily admit,
I saw
it
that.
makes the life easier for finance. It can make it a little confusing for those who don't deal with it on a daily basis.
Not to get too far into the weeds, but there was only one time that you said that you mentioned the Bolton study in one of these reactivations. And I'm wondering, first of all, I thought we'd abandoned Bolton.
No,
Long
Bolton
time ago.
still actually reviews positions, but again, this one is a position that we already have.
I get it. No, the Bolton reference was in finance, actually.
Okay.
For some reason, you put Bolton increase grade, and I thought, well, that's the only Bolton I've seen.
Well, it's also because I also readily admit, try to fit everything on one page so people can read it. And so like the explanation would end up being this long and it would be so tiny that nobody would be able to read it. So any new positions that we have taken those through Bolton. So if we are looking at changing a grade on a position that is already an M35 and we think it has more duties than what an M35 does, we have taken that through Bolton to have them take a look at it.
Okay.
So, and again, that's across the board for all of these on the Exhibit E.
Great. Yes, Joe?
Couple things. Tracy, due to the fact that we're going to be quit doing work for the city, is there any cost savings there?
I don't believe there'll be any cost savings, no, because we were already absorbing all of that cost on our original budget. We weren't getting any additional money in, and it was really just a timing situation with existing staff, taking them away from current duties and actually having to give them some comp time in order to get those meeting minutes and things of that sort accomplished. We were never doing reviews, but we were providing support staff to all the meetings to Planning Commission in the way of meeting minutes, agenda packets, mail-outs, those sort of things. They were paying for their copies that they did in the city office and would bring down to us. And we were starting to hand deliver the packages just because they were so bulky that it would have cost us a fortune to mail them out.
Okay. I noticed under operating.
Yes, comp time, right.
Yeah, under operating expenses, if you go across the board here, it was 1,424, then you were budgeted 4,000, and then 25, 4,000. You only spent 989.19, and you got 4,000 again budgeted. I would wonder.
On dues and subscriptions.
I would wonder why you would not reduce that, and it's 3 times more than what you actually spent.
Well, one of the reasons that I didn't propose to reduce it is because we've increased staff rather dramatically, especially on the building and permits and inspection side. And so because we filled so many staff positions, we have a lot more that have professional licensing or professional dues, or, for example, we have 2 nuisance officers now, plus our codes administrator that subscribe to the SAZOA. So we're anticipating greater costs. As a matter of fact, most of the line items that have been increased in the FY26 budget are primarily due to the increase in staff and what we're anticipating those, costs to have to the department.
Under contractual services, you went in 24 from 15,000, then 25 to 25,000, and actually spent 10,000, but now you've gone to 200,000.
They have to update their comprehensive plan
Is that what
starting.
that's for?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So that is to contract that out.
Okay.
And actually, the Public Works Department has just put out to bid the comprehensive water and sewer plan that the council had already budgeted for in a previous year. And it makes the most sense to have the comprehensive water and sewer plan updated, at the same time as the comprehensive plan, because the land use carries over into the service areas for water and sewer and vice versa. So if this would be the year that the budget could include the comprehensive plan, it would be the best year. And we are on 10-year cycle. So 2017, it was last adopted. It'll take a year, year and a half to get through that process, and that'll put us right on track for 2027.
Yeah, Jim?
Tracy, thank you for being here. The chief building inspector and the building inspector, didn't we recently increase the salaries?
Yes,
Of
and I'm
those-
glad you asked me that question. So when our chief building inspector was originally hired, they were hired at $60,000. And in their offer letter, it was stated that when they received all their certifications, their ICC certifications for energy, residential, and commercial inspector, that they would get an increase of $7,594. What happened is, in the period of time, the year that they had a year in which to do that, in that period of time, it crossed the fiscal year. So that individual got a raise in your last budget year in FY '25 of $3,000. So their salary went from 60 to 63. When they completed all their certifications and they came in, because the way in which the offer letter was written, we didn't feel we could offer the full $7,594 because they had gotten the increase of $3,000. So in addition to that, according to the MACO survey, and also I polled the adjacent counties to see what their chief building inspectors are making. And in almost every instance, it was between $75,000 and $85,000. In some cases, obviously in the more metropolitan counties, it's over $100,000. But to be fair, Somerset, it's $78,500, Talbot, $79,000, Worcester County, $73,000. So we were trying to keep it more in market with the surrounding area. And also to be fair to what was promised before that didn't really come to fruition. If you look at it from the viewpoint, if the $60,000 had gone to $67,594 and then had gotten the 5% on that, we're really only talking about a difference in salary of $4,500. I know it looks like a much larger increase, but in actuality, it is not. It's about a $4,500 difference.
Thank you. Oh, real quick, open positions.
Yes, so right now, we did have a GIS person leave, and we are in the process of scheduling interviews to fill that position. We had several good applications come in. The only reason why the preservation planner that is in the budget be renamed to long-range planner, that was an in-house promotion. So the person that served as our preservation planner was promoted to our planning manager. And the only reason why we haven't filled that is because we wanted to change the title, and that needed to come before council. So we waited for this opportunity before reaching out to hire on that. So those are the only 2 vacancies that we have right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Charles, how are you?
Good, Mr. President. Charles Schmeckel, Deputy Director of Finance. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to meet with us to discuss this. I'd like to go over some of the big things you're probably noticing in the Department of Finance, specifically around our salary and position changes. To begin with, places that I've worked before and somewhat here, I've noticed that promotions within government depend on when somebody retires or dies. It tends to be demotivational in some aspect. Over the last several years, we've lost a few key people integral to our operations. In all those cases, they left for higher paying jobs. So looking at that, I'm proposing to take our line worker positions and to provide some opportunities here. I'd like to recognize an entry level, an intermediate level, and an expert level within their specialization. Entry level, limited experience, requires supervision and training. Once they've been there for a few years, they understand what happens. More at the intermediate level, they The supervision is quite a bit more limited. They're able to train others on essential tasks. They're able to answer most questions with outside departments or outside people. They're able to do some basic troubleshooting of common problems. And after they've been kind of there for a while, that they can move on to kind of an expert level where they can analyze the problems, identify emerging issues, and solve the complicated problems for us. This would allow for some career progression. It recognizes that experienced employees have greater value to the county. And potentially solves management succession issues that, all right, as they've gained more and more experience and they gain higher titles, that now they're in a position to take over should the need arise. And promotions are now based more on personal growth, skills, and aptitudes, and not when the Grim Reaper comes calling. So that's kind of the basics of it.
The other thing is that we kind of have three divisions within finance. We have the revenue collection division. We kind of have the payment processing division, which consists of both AP and payroll. And we have kind of the accounting side. On the AP and payroll side, we wanted to standardize the titles within the division so that if a vacancy should arise, we're hiring for a skill set that could handle either AP or payroll, and we could look around and see what we get. Right now, the way the titles are structured, if a specific position leaves, you're hiring for an AP position, right? We have been working diligently within the department to cross-train everybody within the AP division and payroll division so that if somebody happens to be out, or if we unfortunately have somebody leave the county, we have the back-trained knowledge in the line worker, not just up at the management level.
Well, let me put it to you this way. A few years ago, we did have a couple of these positions leave. And because of the way that controls are structured, to run payroll, it requires 3 people to do so. Basically, the line worker, the manager, as well as either Pam or I to sign off on everything. Well, in this case, I'm the one that had to do a lot of the line entry work, and I got to tell you, I have no idea for those 2 payroll periods how the whole county got paid if it wasn't for the benefit of the manager. That's not a position that we want to be in, and so we've been cross-training our people to do both AP and payroll. And I got to tell you, as we started this process, nature had its way, and thank goodness we had started on that path because we absolutely needed to have people from one side working on the other. And of course, it came at the worst possible times. We're dealing with a couple of snowstorms that required a lot of overtime and a lot of specialized problems that were evolving within the county, which created a domino effect on the payroll.
But it created great training opportunities for those being cross-trained.
But I got to tell you, it's essential that we cross-train these people so we have enough people to cover these essential tasks. And so that's a lot of the reason that you see those changes in title there.
Yeah, we wanted to, again, instead of having a payroll coordinator and an accounting assistant and a disbursement accountant, we wanted to have a disbursement and accountant across the board. And those are people that can do any of the disbursements that the county has, both AP and payroll and processing our purchase cards.
So we submitted it through Bolton, so Bolton did check out on those positions. And so we found that, all right, we need to put people kind of at the low mid, or I believe there was a market media position for 2 of them that had 20 years of experience, not necessarily with the county, but sufficient experience, that's what was merited. On our revenue agent side, we have a couple of people who've now been there for a couple of years. They're able to act at a level of our senior revenue agents. And so it's probably time to recognize their skill set and the fact that they can handle a lot of the issues for those at the counter. We also have somebody last year, we had moved her up based upon the Bolton study. We took a look at that position, and we weren't sure that it was quite evaluated by Bolton properly, and so we submitted it back. And Bolton said, yeah, on second thought, we think it needs to be at a higher grade, and so you probably see that one reflected.
That one doesn't have a title change. It's staying at the same title. It's just, it's a grade change. And that is the one that actually does say Bolton increase. But again, all of these have gone through Bolton if they are, especially the disbursement ones, because they are new titles. If council accepts these, then when we adopt the budget, we will also have to adopt a change to the pay and classification plan to make those title changes.
And then last year, we had brought to you a couple of managers that we had Bolton reevaluate, and you weren't comfortable with moving them to the full amount in one step. And so we're coming back to ask for the remainder. So that's, I believe that's all of the positions that we have asked for.
Okay.
And then otherwise, the only other real major change is cost of postage. USPS goes up. We have a lot of mailings that go out from the finance department, and thus we had to increase that dollar amount.
Speaking of that, I had a citizen contact me. Do you have a firewall that goes up? And I guess that's what you call it. If somebody owes like 13 cents or 28 cents, because we had a citizen call me and said, I've got a bill here that my taxes weren't paid. And I can't remember, it was 28 cents or 39 cents or something. And she called up there and the girl said, don't worry about it, we'll mark it. But that,
So,
I know how much it costs to generate, so.
So unfortunately, we don't have the ability to tell it not to print the bill. And because of the number of bills we have, we don't have the ability to also check each bill. But there is a firewall per se in that it would not go to tax sale, it would not get the advertising charge because there is a minimum threshold, and I want to say it's $250?
$250.
$250. So now the 13.
I want to advertise that too.
So if it's under that, their number it'll just roll into the next year, onto the next year's tax bill. It won't get advertised, it won't get an advertising fee, and I think that number is also state law. Don't quote me on that one, but I think that one is state law. So again, I don't have the staff to literally sit there and pull the bills.
Question.
So,
Well,
it does
being
go.
critical, I just.
Yeah, no, I'm just letting you know that it does go out, but it doesn't get advertised.
If somebody mentioned me, it's not, oh, go ahead, Shane.
I just want to say, that was a question you answered good, cross-training. That's excellent, what you've done. I commend you all for that.
Somebody mentioned me, and I don't know the specifics of it, they made some kind of comment like, I can't believe that your finance department is still doing everything by paper. And I don't even really know what the topic was, whether he was paying his taxes or what it may have been. But I don't know if that's something that you consider as to whether or not you would be accepting more billing online or whether you're already doing that. I don't know.
Well, our bills are all available online.
But
So
paying.
You can pay online as well. And they have the ability to do that. The issue is that if you want to pay online, you have to pay a fee that gets charged to us by the
Yeah.
firm.
Everybody's doing that.
That is, because again, if Shani wants to pay by check, why should she pay your credit card fee? So we charge the people who want to use a credit card, who want to use the online capabilities, we charge them the cost that we get.
I get it.
So, all bills are online. We don't have the ability to email all tax bills. If somebody asks us, calls us up and say, hey, I didn't get my bill, we can easily download it to a PDF. You have to give us your email because we also don't have that information.
Maybe that's what they were referring to, that they wanted to receive their bills online as opposed to through the mail. That may have been it.
So they have the ability to go online and see their bill,
Yeah.
but we don't send a bill.
If they see it, they can print it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, but we don't have the ability, because we get our information to do the mailings from what the state has on their records. So if you have not updated your mailing address with the state, we don't have that. Again, with the thousands that we send out, we have no way of knowing that your address is not correct. So we send them out based on what the state has. We pretty much on a daily basis get a telephone call saying, hey, I didn't get my bill because I moved. Okay, here's how you go about getting it changed. We recommend you do that now so that when we get the next bill come out in July, your new bill is updated. But if I updated their bill in our system today, when I get the upload from the state, it'll go back to the address that the state gave us. We have no way of telling our system to maintain what we got over the phone. So we tell everybody, you must contact the state to get that changed.
Anything else, Charles?
I was going to say, I think that covers most of the things that I'd like to talk about, unless there's something you want to talk about.
I think we're good. Thank you very much. I have a lot of other questions, Pam, but a lot of the questions that I have are really related to the budget overall, and I think we're going to have to schedule another work session with the executive branch and with you, with
That's
your
fine.
office as well.
And I believe we have
Go
one
with
also.
bigger issues, yes.
Yeah, we have one scheduled next week.
On the 8th.
And you're meeting with Angie on Friday, if I understand.
Correct.
Yeah, that'll probably resolve a lot. Okay, thank you. And Human Resources is up next. One question I did have is that I noticed in Exhibits B and C, you don't have a fiscal year 2025 adopted budget.
It's my wording. Original means adopted in my brain, so that
That's
is,
okay.
it's the same thing.
Original, but shouldn't it be,
It's not proposed, it is original, it is once a
Actual.
budget becomes adopted, it becomes the original budget because that's what's enacted. So, could it say adopted?
That's right.
Yeah. That is Pam Oland speak for,
adopted usually means it's been amended also during the process.
nope, that would mean, that would be adjusted budget. So adopted budget is the budget that you guys passed in the original resolution back last June. Adjusted budget is what has happened with budget transactions since then.
Yeah, because, so when you say 2025 original budget,
I mean, what it should tie to your resolution in June of 2024.
that was what was finally adopted?
Yes.
Okay.
It is not what the executive turned in. It is what council
Okay.
adopted in the resolution.
Because there's other areas, I think, where the for the original, and yet it isn't quite the final product. That's okay. I just, like it.
Pam Olin speak in this column. Original equals adopted, which equals what ties to the resolution that happened in 2024.
Sounds great.
Okay.
I remember that.
I was going to say, I went to Pam this morning and said, I need to take more opportunities to meet with the council, trying to grow more into this role. So if you'll allow it,
Sure.
we'll discuss some HR next.
And I will say that if you look at your munis detail. Yes, this is cross-training.
Showing.
So one other thing to look at is that when we give you the munis detail for additional information, that does say original budget. It says ORIG. So again, that's kind of, and original budget means adopted, again, in munis. So,
Yeah, but it's.
I know.
the other-
It's Pam Olin speak, I tied it to munis.
It's okay. Go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead, Charles. Pam interrupted you.
So
I did. My fault.
I'm used to it.
I do
It's
it
her
all the
prerogative. So we have Donna O'Hare, the Director of HR. Really, the only major change in HR is probably the collective bargaining agreement, because we do have that due this upcoming year. You're seeing that amount rise from 20,000 from this year to 70,000 proposed for this next fiscal year. So that's about.
The attorney fees are outrageous. One phone call, one research project can be $7,000, $8,000 a pop.
And so, yeah, with the fact that the FOP contract is a 2-year contract fiscal '26 is the year that that will have to be negotiated again, and thus the county will require specialized attorney to help us with that.
Attorney's fees for collective bargaining is going to be paid through HR?
And that's what,
only.
yes, and that's where it has historically been. So if you go back to 2020,
Unless somebody else would like to take
so 2024, you will see that we spent $58,000 on collective bargaining because we did the contract for 25-26. Well, we're putting money in
Yeah.
to do it again because it was only a 2-year contract.
That begs the question, why did you just do a 2-year contract?
They weren't interested in a 3, and originally they only wanted a 1. So the fact that we wanted 3, they wanted 1, and we were able to negotiate and get it to be a 2-year deal. And I'm personally thankful that we didn't spend 25 negotiating another year because 1-year deals are really
We're
hard.
starting in August, so yes, it will be, yeah.
So,
I'm not doing that.
again, we would
Hopefully
have
we can
preferred a
get
longer
3.
term. It didn't happen.
2 is painful, but it is what it is.
Any other questions that we can help you with on HR?
Who would be able to provide a vacancy report for everybody? Is that HR or you?
Combination, we will have HR work with our payroll person to make sure that we have a complete and accurate vacancy report.
That include how long the positions have been vacant?
Sure can. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Yes.
The volunteer fire benefits, they were decreasing from 2,200 to 100,000, but the volunteer fire operating costs and the volunteer ambulance benefits were increasing.
That's in fire, that's not in, that's
Yeah, I
not.
know, but because it's a benefits question, I thought, if it's not appropriate.
Well, there's two different
Okay.
there's two different portions of the benefits, but there is a portion of the benefits that we, the county pay the workers' comp for the fire members. We pay, the volunteer fire pay the workers' comp for their EMS employees. Thus, based on history, the amount that we had in there for the fire amount that we pay has been historically too high. So we reduced it to closer to the amount that we have been paying.
Sorry, I wasn't sure which time to ask.
That's fine. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks, Charles.
You like how the executive comes up and you see where Bunky went, like, out.
There's no cross-training there.
I know. He likes to get phone calls, when it's convenient for him.
Let me get to the right page.
What page is it on?
12. and-
Starts on
Yes,
12.
12.
There's a few other references.
So, basically, one of the biggest increases is due to fuel cost, in the fact that we are budgeting for the executive office to utilize 3 vehicles in 2026 versus the 2 that we had been doing in 2025. Bunky had not taken a county vehicle until this year, or till just recently, and thus we only had 2 vehicles on the road for administration. We are looking at fuel costs to have 3 vehicles on the road. Otherwise, most of the other line items that are increasing are due to inflationary costs. Their salary number is basically the 5% growth.
Actually, just really quick, that will most likely end up changing depending on what happens with the assistant director of administration. I know I sent you all an email about that. The salary that had been negotiated, if, it goes through council approval, is actually around 12,000 less than what is proposed in here. So that will actually go down as well.
So if council approves that position before the budget gets adopted, we would be able to reduce the dollar amount in the budget.
Speaking of vehicles, last year we discussed and requested, I believe, that each department would be charged for their vehicles that were either purchased by the county or leased by the county. And I see that's not been done again this year.
So administratively, that makes more administrative work for the finance department. I provided an Appendix C-B
Seen that, yeah.
that provides you the additional cost to each department. Most of our vehicles are leased. If an individual department was buying a vehicle, they would get the buying cost in there, but we are not doing much buying. So,
But it really doesn't give you the true cost of what a department is costing.
well,
It really doesn't.
So going down that, we don't charge the departments for the cost of doing payroll. We don't charge the departments for the cost of doing AP. We don't charge the departments for the cost of doing HR. All of those things are the true cost of having a planning and zoning department.
We used to not charge the departments for benefits, but we do that now, so.
Because accounting rules have changed in time. So that is an accounting rule change. The presentation of administrative costs that are part of a fund is allowed to be decided by the government, and per our charter, it says the executive is allowed to present the budget in any form he or she would like. I understand council made a request. I attempted to provide you additional information, but for a financial aspect of getting the bills, it makes a whole lot more sense for us to have it in one department by fund. So Rec and Parks gets theirs charged to them. Civic Center gets theirs charged to them. Solid Waste gets theirs charged to them. If you're within the general fund, we have a Department 47 that tracks those costs for the whole general fund as a whole.
Well, I think it's much easier than that. If you can tell us that corrections is spending $112,000 a year on leases, anybody can tell us how many cars they have. That's all we're asking. That's just how many cars. We're not asking you to put it in a line item in the budget. We're not asking you to any of that. We're just saying how many cars.
I can
these departments
easily
have.
get you the information as to how many cars each of that line items is.
It's kind of like what we're looking for.
Okay.
I mean, that's a good start, right?
Good start.
And
Okay.
then we'll average. We don't care. We'll just average it.
Okay, again, you have in the detail, again, we provided it in there, so you could take the dollar amount associated with roads,
And-
corrections,
yeah.
and add on the number that's in that Appendix B.
Understood.
And I will get you the total number of vehicles that each one of them has.
Sure.
Well, I guess if we could do that, why couldn't you?
Because I have to pay the bills.
Just don't understand.
Because I have to pay the bills, and
Yeah.
depending on where that money sits is where I pay that bill out of. So now I will have to pay, instead of paying all the general fund leases out of one department, I now have to pay attention that, okay, they sent us a bill today, and that bill has 3 on it for roads and 2 on it for corrections and 1 on it for IT. Well, now we have to code that. We have to get the departments to each sign off on it. It makes it a whole lot easier for administrative purposes for us to be able to, we can track it, we can tell you, and I can tell you how many vehicles.
That would be simple. That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I'm looking at the vehicles. You say you're going to do three vehicles? I only see 2 on here.
Where do you see vehicles?
I'm on page 13, under whatever budget analysis. Yes.
I don't,
So are you going to purchase it in the next budget? The third one?
I don't, no, we have no vehicle purchases on here. We have
Should
fuel
already own
costs.
it, don't we?
I'm looking at the expenses. Wouldn't you include that in the coming year?
Are you talking like fuel
No,
expense?
I'm
maintenance
talking about the
expense?
vehicle expenses.
So that is on, again, 3 vehicles that are purchased for our list, the total dollar amount is in Appendix C-B, and executive we pay $55,000 for the executive department in lease expense.
So it's independence, okay. I'm just,
It's part of the total leased amount of $940,000, which is part of Department 47.
you include insurance and all that stuff.
The insurance is through our legit bill, which is not part of Department 47. We have a legit line.
Know how many, since we're on cars, do you know how many cars we still have in I guess, that we still own?
I can get you that. I don't know
I'm
off
just,
the
I
top.
mean, it's not really relevant, I guess, but it'd be nice to know, hey, do we still own 10 cars, or is everybody leasing now? And are we ever going to buy another car ever again? Are we going to be leasing everything we own?
I believe there are still a couple vehicles at Rec and Park. So, for example, what can happen at times is that we pay off a lease and decide that the vehicle still doesn't have enough miles on it to warrant us to trade it in.
Right.
And so we now own that vehicle. We bought it through our lease payments, but we own the vehicle. And thus, so we do have some fully, again, it's a very technical accounting. All of these vehicles are considered owned by us from the day we start making payments on them. But when we stop making payments, that vehicle is 100% ours and is no longer being financed. I can get you,
I don't know how relevant that is, Pam, I just was curious.
I'd have to take a look. I'd have to take a look. I can't remember
Apparently.
off the top of my head.
Lease program.
It might, the pool car might be in part of that 55. It could very easily be.
I remember thinking it was always great how Rec and Parks could keep a car for 8 years. I thought that we were doing fairly well, and I understand all the maintenance stuff and all that too, but I'm not so sure of that.
I still go back to what the first, one of the first vehicles that I drove while working for Rec and Parks was one of the big repurposed, like sheriff's vehicles. And, it was a Crown Vic. And, I put my purse down on the floor of the passenger seat, and I go pick up my purse from when I got to my location, and the whole well was full of water where my purse was.
Oh, no.
So, again, we might have carried that one a little too long, because I think that vehicle, when I was driving it, was 12 years old at that point. So, again, sometimes we have carried vehicles too long and make them a financial hardship to the county.
I had to leave one in Easton one day, so I get it.
Otherwise, if you would like, the executive office also budgets for community promotions. About the only change in that line item is we added, I believe, $1,000 for the Commission on Women. If they have any specific purchases that they need to make during the year, they would just have to contact the executive's office to make those purchases, because they don't have a bank account, they don't have the ability to make a purchase themselves. So we are putting a small amount in the community promotions budget to allow for ancillary purchases if they need something.
Sorry. I just see.
And subscriptions on community promotions, what does that consist of?
It does consist of, I believe, our MACO, the main cost in there is our MACO fees.
Okay. Wouldn't that be paid out of the executive's branch or
No, it's an overall fee for the county.
county?
It's not their going to the Mako conference.
About the contingency and other, what does that consist of?
I can't
That
remember.
was Shorebirds, the Shorebirds payment thing that we had to do,
Oh, on energy?
yeah, on their.
Oh, yes. So we have that, we have the concession agreement with the Shorebirds. The concession agreement requires them to pay us a dollar amount for amusement tax, but to allow them, we own the facility, but they can't get on county utility rates because the utility views them as a separate entity, and thus they have to contract for that. So part of the concession agreement that was drafted years ago was that if the difference between the amount they pay and the rates that the county would get, we, the county, would reimburse them. And so that is where that is built in.
So is there anything in there for like meetings and seminars, or, I know it says.
No, those are, the meetings and seminars are in the executive's budget.
So where would meals and dinners and stuff like that come out of this community promotion? Where would that come?
There isn't employees in there, so there aren't meals and dinners in there. There might be the, I do believe there's the legislative breakfast in there, in community promotion.
No, I got, in '06, there's deli at Pecan Square, $800, deli at Pecan Square, $1,300, Mogan's Oyster House, $25, Rhodey's Joe's Bar, $25, Market Street Inn, $25, and DeCarlo's Treats, $150. That's all out of community promotions.
Yeah, so the 25, 25, and 25 were the 3 gift cards that we used. I'm assuming that was in 24's budget?
I got,
24. I think
yeah,
that's-
wait a minute, let me look, hold on.
No, that's okay.
The
It was-
23 budget.
Yeah, so it was the 25, 25, and 25 were the 3 gift cards when we did the business after hours, when I was first elected, and we had the event at the Civic Center. Part of that goes for the Chamber of Commerce. Part of the deal is if you have a business after hours, you do 3 prizes, and so they said gift cards would be it. So that's all really through the Chamber of Commerce. So that was that. The deli at Pecan Square was for our deputy, like, if was that this year? You're talking about the,
In '22, it was
well, that wasn't.
12, 23, 22, right after the election.
That, oh my God, I would have to go back and look. If we did anything with the deli at Pecan Square, it would be something that they catered or something like that, and typically we do stuff, for our deputies, or we do
I think that was legislative
But
breakfast.
that was legislative breakfast.
Because remember, Pasota didn't
late.
have a legislative breakfast. You didn't take office till December 6th, and we
yeah.
had to do it.
And that was at
I
GSC.
thought the Civic Center did the legislative
They
breakfast.
do, but it was too late for us to do it at that point in time because it was Christmas time. So we had to have it right before the legislative. We had it right at GSC.
We had it at GSC and had to have that outside catered.
Yeah. No, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember the deli, they
Yeah, they came in and catered that for that breakfast, and it was held at GSC.
had a lot of food.
But any of those large,
So they do spend other money than just what you listed here.
There are, again, they're related to community-type events.
yeah, it's not anything like personal that we're going for, like, if we're having the legislative breakfast, or we're having, the delegates here for lunch, or we're having, we did, I think Sheriff Lewis just had a training, and we ended up helping out with the lunch, for everybody who was at the training. President Cannon was there, so we helped out with that. So we try to help out our other departments too. So it's really, a community thing, it's a morale thing, but yes.
You training Cannon to be Mr. Cannon to be a deputy, are we?
Yes.
Did a good job.
Yes. He did a great job. Yes.
So it looks like community promotions has increased 35% since FY '24.
So again,
So has food. Food increase,
Off the food.
again,
or whatever, yes, but,
like anything, we budget based on what we think the year may be. And so I suspect, I do not have it in front of me, I suspect our budget for '24 for community promotions is closer to the dollar amount that we had for '25. It's just we ended up not spending everything that we budgeted. We were fiscally prudent and didn't spend everything. So sometimes comparing actual to budget is across fiscal years is not the best comparison, because actual for '24, it's better to compare actual for '25 to actual or to budget of '25, because that is what you're spending off of. What you want is your number to be lower, because it means that you were fiscally prudent and didn't need to spend everything that you budgeted for.
I have a quick question. Why would you label something community promotions when you're not in the community?
This was it has been named that since well before my time.
Community promotion, because I'm used to community promotion, you know, from up there.
Yeah.
Where you did
it is a title that I think actually probably went in when Munis was installed back in '07, '08 timeframe.
Because when you say community promotions, I'd be thinking something out, like I see Life Crisis on there, but I also think it's like what you did to Commission on Women or something like that involves people in the community. How would you use that?
Again, that's part of what community promotions is. It is intended to be a dollar amount that impacts multiple departments and/or multiple things across the community. It is not assigned to one specific department.
I got for GOB security, I know we recently had the discussion about potentially increasing the security.
So
I didn't see anything reflected.
No, at this moment, so the council has approved over the last several years money to do building evaluations. And as such, we are working with our general services manager to contract using some of those funds that we have set aside to do an evaluation of what kinds of renovations we could potentially do on this building for both security and probably ADA adjustments. As such, that is going to take some time, and until we actually know a dollar amount, it doesn't make sense to make any changes in this. So again, we're going to utilize the funds that have already been appropriated by council to do that evaluation, because the other piece is we're only a 50% owner of this building, and so any renovations that we want to do, we will also have to get city buy-off on, because they will have to assume 50% of that cost. We readily admit at this moment, we have budgeted 100% of the cost for doing this evaluation, because when we put them in the budgets, we just said building evaluations, and it could be any building within the county. We have done evaluations at corrections, we've done evaluations. Can we attempt to bill the city for that? Yes. Will they pay? I can't answer that question. But we have funds available for us to go ahead and move forward, at least with the evaluation, to see what is the most feasible method to move forward with the discussions that have been happening.
And also what I've asked Pete to look at, because, Matt, you guys have Matt Drew in front of you, so the building energy performance standards that the state has, given us, so we're also looking at that, so that when that's fully implemented, I believe in 2030, we're not on the other side of that paying. I think they call it a fee, but it's really a fine. We want to be energy efficient enough that we're not giving the state, that revenue. So he's looking at that.
Cheaper than to fix it, maybe.
It might be. It might.
I know that there are kind of some orphan departments that don't really roll up, except up under the executive. So. Just so you know, mosquito control council, we have done some purchases of some sprayers, or we're attempting to do some purchase of sprayers. I think it's on the next agenda to do. Well, we've budgeted to do some additional purchases in 2026 for that, and so that is the growth that you see in mosquito control. Gypsy moth, that is an estimate based on what we have historically been charged by the state for those. Again, one of the biggest growth in general services is due to the fact that we just rebid the contracts for a lot of the cleaning services across, especially this campus with the old courthouse, new courthouse here, and all of those, you'll see that across the budgets. The lowest responsive bidder went up, and so We don't have employees in-house who have the ability, that we have the ability to do those cleaning services, thus we do need to contract them out. So you're subject to what is being offered in the community. So that is in multiple budgets that you'll see an increase in the cost associated with cleaning services because of those contracts.
And I just want to say from the executive budget, I mean, it's one of the lowest increases across in every department. So we're at a 6% increase. It'll actually go down less than that if we end up doing the assistant director position at $120,000. So pretty proud to keep it as slim as possible because we know that it's a tough year. So I'd rather see my other departments get what they need and, just kind of do the bare minimum for mine. Sorry,
The weed control program, I got an email from Victoria Spice that said the county had told her that you were quitting the invasive weed, noxious weed law. You all weren't going to do that
I
anymore.
can't answer that. I will have to look into that. I don't have an answer. That would,
We'll wait.
weed control,
I'll wait until.
because that falls up under roads.
Roads, yeah.
So I don't.
You mentioned some of the other programs.
Yeah, that one doesn't have its own separate budget. Mosquito control and gypsy moth has its own.
Okay, that's fine. We'll wait on that. Thank you.
Any other questions on kind of general? And then we do have, I don't know. Emergency services is next, but they're not scheduled till 3:40. I don't know if Lorenzo's here.
If emergency services is ready, it's fine with me.
We'll have to go check the executive's office to find out if they're here.
One question I would have is something that's coming up as far as EMS, and we've talked a million times about establishing EMS around the county. Is that what the contingency, ambulance contingency and fire contingency is for?
No, no. The only thing that we are doing with the SWAT that came in is the additional position in emergency services. So that is for the EMS, I believe it's titled a EMS coordinator position. And that person, what we're hoping is that was the next step in SWAT, regardless of whatever direction the county goes, whether we do the chase unit or whether we do the one-in-one. So this would be the next step, is putting in a coordinator and really having that person almost do like a feasibility, even though we already had that SWAT analysis, but really, kind of analyzing the county as a whole and what would be the best case scenario. So they can speak, more to it, Lorenzo, right on time.
If you can answer or ask me that question tomorrow, please.
Okay.
Because I have that all printed out, ready to go for volunteer fire. I do not have that answer off the top of my head, but I have it printed out, ready to go for tomorrow. So please hold that,
I got it right here.
and I will answer that one tomorrow for you.
About the EMS coordinator position and talking about that was the next step.
So,
I got the seat all warmed up.
Julie did mention there is one new position we're looking at. It's, we'd like to name it Chief EMS Vision. It is a new position. We're budgeting it at the midpoint. And again, this is a position to take the next steps on the SWOT analysis as to which direction we want to go.
To back up real quick, I forgot to mention the estimate for $800,000 liquor control dispensary.
Yes.
That seems like that's a very high estimate based on the fact that, since we eliminated a good portion of their wholesale, I was concerned that maybe that number was going to be a little misleading. Is that from them?
That is based on the current estimates that we have received.
If you could, well, I don't know. And I know it's all estimates, but I was really surprised to see 800. I thought it would have been more like 6. Whether or not it's possible, since some of this will be amended anyway, to check with them and say, hey, what do you think that number is really going to be?
Okay.
Thanks, Pam.
Yep.
Sorry. What do we have here?
Emergency services, Lorenzo and Chris. And again, the biggest change on their budget on the position side is that chief position. Additionally, for their positions, they requested kind of a flat rate increase for their 911 operators of $3,000 a person. And we loaded that in, and we did not split that. So they would be getting all of that in July, in the first full payroll in July. It would not be split like the other positions are within the county.
Could that be why it appeared that there were a lot of new increases?
Yeah, their numbers are not a straight percentage because they're not the 5% like everybody, all the others. So there was a specific request made by the department. We tried to honor that request.
So in other words, instead of giving the 5%, you're going to do?
Yes. And we're doing it for the full year versus doing it a split 3-2.
So it's 6 months more of increases.
Yeah, so they would have it the whole year.
I understand each department works different, but what I look at a lot of times is the morale of the other departments when they, we're not the only ones that see this. All the other employees in the county see it. And when you see somebody getting a lot more, here's a 20% increase in a salary, here's a 31% increase, here's a 20%, here's a 16%. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I see that as not a morale booster.
But
in other departments is what.
Well, but again, our county has historically tried to, how to best say this? Historically tried to not offend any other department for any other department's raises. And that has hurt us because we then have lost really good employees to other counties and other locations that are willing to pay more. And that is institutional knowledge on how to run our county and run our county appropriately that walks out the door. So what we have attempted to do over the last 2 fiscal years specifically is to look at each department and say, what are the needs of that department? And we have looked at it a little bit in a silo method because I can't bring a 911 operator over to collect money in finance. And I can't take a roads worker to go answer the phones at 911. There are different tasks and different requirements and different needs at each department. And so we have evaluated the market conditions associated to the best of our ability to fund them and weigh them across the county as a whole.
You say you've evaluated, I know they did Bolton a few years ago. Have you done another study since then? Or?
Well, and again, most of these positions that we have asked for different amounts than just the standard have been through discussions with Bolton as to what the market conditions are for those specific positions.
So Bolton has suggested that this is what you should do?
Yes.
They have?
Yes.
Is there documentation on that?
I would have to see because again, I will see what we can pull together.
Bolton should have it, right?
Well, but again, there's a lot of positions here, so to put it in a format that council can see that it ties out to this information, and in some instances, Bolton recommended higher numbers than what we've put here. So we will pull together.
I'm not denying that they don't need these raises, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is there's just such a discrepancy between what some people are getting in the county and other people are getting, even in this department. A 31% raise compared to I see one on here for 1%, but that, I don't know what that's all about. But,
There's a 2% too.
Yeah, so, anyway.
Again, there are also limitations because we have a scale, and if a person has reached the maximum on the scale, we do not put them over the scale. If they are already over the scale, then they're over the scale. We don't bring them back down. But as we've been bringing the scale up, we have been
So So if they've requested this would you say $4,000?
3,000.
3,000? If everybody's getting that, does that bump some people over the scale?
If the only people that are not getting raises are the ones who are in kind of that orangey red in your scale. I tried to attempt to show you ones that have either maxed out on the scale, so they might be only getting a 1-2%, or there are a couple employees in this county that are not getting any raise because they are already over the scale.
Would this formula work for the whole county? All the employees?
What do you mean, the formula?
Well, I'm going to call it a formula.
The $3,000 or the?
Right, yeah, $3,000 across the board for every employee in Wicomico County, rather than doing the 5 or 3%, or maybe not even 3,000, maybe 4,000 or 5,000.
Probably not, just due to the variability of the scale. So a $3,000 on a M, you're going to create significant compression if you do a strict dollar amount versus a percentage on a scale. Again, this is one title that we did, one set of titles that we did this for. And so all of those titles move together. But if you did a flat dollar amount to every employee, then those employees, it would create compression on the scale based on current salaries.
Like I said, you look at this, and I'm not criticizing the money they should get paid. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but how many employees we got? 800 employees, 700, something like that, Pam?
Somewhere in that range.
Okay. So you look at this one and you see these raises, and then you go back to IT and you see 12 and 15% raises, and then you see people getting 3% to begin with, and then a half a year later getting 2 more. I'm seeing that as from the outside in, I'm looking in and saying, boy, why am I in that department? Why am I working for this department and not that department, or, you know?
If you want to become trained as a 911 operator, I am sure they will gladly accept them.
Mr. Cropper, if you both could just state your name and your position for the public.
Lorenzo Cropper, Director of Emergency Services.
Chris Hopkins, Deputy Director of Emergency Services.
Thanks. Mr. Cropper, Director Cropper, maybe you would like to help Mr. Holloway on that?
In regard to the 911 specialist increase that I'm asking for, it's just to get us in the nosebleed section of a stadium, to be honest with you. Somerset County is starting their 911 specialists at $47,000 to $48,000. We're at $41,900. So we're one of the lowest paid all around. So I'm just trying to get in the ballpark. I'm not trying to get to the top. I just want to get them into the stadium nosebleed section so I can hopefully
But you
retain
understand
them.
what I'm saying?
No, I understand that.
The 800 employees.
Sure, I understand that. But when I'm running the risk of losing, and it takes almost 2 years to get somebody fully trained, and then I run the risk of losing them, I'm not trying to lose them, because then we have to go back to and train them all over again.
So as I stated, we do have to look at titles and departments separately. Yes, that does create percentage changes between departments, but ultimately, the administrative decision was to attempt to look at the departments and the needs of each department and what can the county afford, but also what can the county afford not to lose.
Director, one other question I would have for you. The Pittsfield Tower building, we don't know much about it. We are going to be getting that on the CIP when everybody gets together on Friday, together with the radio dispatch consoles project. But could you help us out a little bit on what that is?
That's the oldest tower building of all of the ones. We've got about 8, and that's the oldest one. It was not replaced in 17 when the others were replaced. All of the others were replaced in 17 when they did the new radio system. For whatever reason, I was not in position, they did not replace that one. So that was now approximately 20 years old, and it has some major damage.
So-
I carried the finance director down there to help me to observe it so that she could validate.
We are actually, that tower location is actually a state tower, and it's on state property. There is a state building, a county building, and then the city is also on that tower as well. They don't have a building, but they are on the tower. What we are looking at, the state has stated verbally that they would be interested in potentially combining the two buildings into one, and thus they would help pay for a refresh of the building in total. It is not one that can be rehabbed. They again, it was enlightening to me because I have never toured one before. But basically, they lift a building in and place it on piers and lift the building out. It is not a stick-built building. It is a kind of a metal box with insulation and that kind of stuff in it, and it then has all the equipment. The piece that is included in this dollar amount, and we met with Motorola on it, is that they are looking at phasing out some of the technology that we currently have. They offered us a couple options. One of those options was to pull out our equipment that we currently have in there, place in a new building, and then put our old equipment back in. But in 2 years, we're going to have to replace that equipment anyways. So it didn't make financial sense to spend the money, have that tower be down for a period of time as well. The period of taking out an old building and plopping in a new one that's fully functioning with additional equipment and new equipment is a whole lot shorter time frame of having a tower down than taking all the equipment out, storing it, taking the building out, dropping a new building in, putting back all the equipment, and then 2 years from now we have to take the equipment out and replace it anyways because Motorola is not going to accept it.
So
this has happened since we submitted the CIP.
You have all these in PAYGO, but you're saying that this may be state, some of this may be state.
Well, that would be our share, because the state would be an additive amount, because this is literally just replacing our box.
So we would need to amend the budget as well as the CIP when we...
Well, the CIP has never been adopted, so there is no CIP to amend.
Well, you say it hasn't been adopted, but we're going to have to add this to the CIP, obviously.
So council here's... As I stated back in the winter, I requested council to adopt the CIP to give us a roadmap. But like every other year that we have historically done, the CIP is a roadmap. It is not a guarantee of funding. It is an attempt to estimate what we're going to do for funding for the next year. Council has then adopts a capital budget. That capital budget is our funding mechanism. That capital budget over the since I've been here, has had differences from the CIP because either we have gotten additional dollar amounts, we have gotten additional information, we have found a project that is more important than a project that was on there previously. So the CIP is a plan, the capital budget is what appropriates. So council has not yet adopted a CIP. Because you're doing those in conjunction, can we make them this first time match? Yes.
Well, they have to match.
No.
By charter, the first year of the budget has to match the CIP.
We don't amend the CIP when we make budget amendments throughout the year.
We're still working on it. We haven't approved it yet.
Okay. So fine, you amend the CIP to reflect what we're putting in the capital budget.
That's why I'm trying to say, though, is it accurate enough to just put in there that it's going to be $1,050,000? You say that's only our portion. Is there something more accurate in referencing
That is
state grants,
a quote
et cetera,
that
et cetera?
that is an estimate that we got from Motorola for our share. So if the state wants to add on to us, it is going to cost additional money, and it is not in here because I don't know what the state share is going to cost. But if we want to just replace our building and our equipment, it's $1,050,000. Total.
So the state's not really helping us with our building. They're going to be responsible for another building that they own.
And or making the building bigger in total to house both sets of equipment.
Because I don't want to, the one thing I'm trying to avoid is saying, well, you've already committed $1,050,000 to this. Now you have to add another million to this. We can't leave it half done. So
No.
planning is planning.
So, and that is why we're working with the state and hopefully working with the city of Salisbury to get that but if we are going to replace what is in there now with just our stuff and with a new building for just us, it's $1,050,000.
Okay, because we've heard before, you guys approved it, and we're going, okay. So,
Well, but I mean, again, we're also sitting here, I got this estimate a month and a half ago, and we're going to potentially go under contract 8 months from now. These are the best estimates that we can do at any point in time.
okay.
I would love to have a magic 8-ball that told me every dollar amount that we're going to spend over the next year. I actually wouldn't be working for Wicomico County if I did, because somebody else would hire me.
The other question that I had, if I could, do we have like are we going to get a job description on this chief EMS director? And how is these job description, how is it going to differ from what you gentlemen are doing now?
This individual would be running the EMS division. Right now, we have radio, emergency management, and the 911. So we've got 3. This would be a 4th division up under our department. So
Okay. If you would supply, we may
Yep.
have it somewhere. Do we have that
I don't-
chart?
We don't have, we can get you that.
That'd be great, because it's always good to know, right?
Yep, we
So-
can get you, I added it to the
Yeah.
list of questions.
Organizational chart, yeah, that'd be really helpful. That's a great explanation.
We can get an organizational chart and we can get the job description.
Perfect, okay, wonderful. Yes,
How short of staff are you?
Well, to be honest with you, besides the 2 that were pulled back last year, we're full.
get out of here.
And this is, so yeah, knock on wood, because that,
Congratulations. But I see a 50% increase in your overtime budget. Is that,
that's a direct result. If I have to have a minimum staffing in order to start shift. And at full staff, without losing the 2 we lost last year, it would have been 5 per shift. Now, all of them I can't count as staffing because some of them have to be trained. So, for example, most of the shifts right now, I got a minimum of 4 people, and 2 shifts I have 5 assigned to them. Well, on those 4 people, if for whatever reason somebody's already off and somebody else calls out sick, I got to bring in overtime immediately.
Yeah.
So even to start the shift.
there's a little overlap.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
it's assumed a number of people on a shift, but if you have a vacation, if you have
Yes, sir.
somebody, so you have to have that number of people, and you can't take that person off of their shift, because again, we have minimum staffing on their shifts as well. So we're asking for overtime on the other shifts.
We used to say we doze, but we don't close, but you don't even doze, do you?
24/7.
Yep, 365. Thank you for what you guys do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I see we have a reduction in, a huge reduction in your, hold on a second, in your capital expenses, from last year to
It's just different things being
Sure, yeah,
purchased.
Sure, gotcha. Any other questions from anybody?
One question,
Yes,
ma'am.
Penny?
and this is just general. What's the stress level for your 911?
Interestingly, you brought that up. The state is now looking at that overall across statewide, and we have to do some mandatory training and offer certain services to our.
Because I asked that because of Joe's comment about the salary and everything. I look at the type of work you're doing, the stress level that you have on that position. Because I mean, working in the medical field many years ago, I see that's part of a medical field, or for medical, because I hear the ambulance going by every day at my house. So I look at that type of job that you're doing, and it's almost like an air line, what's it called, controller? You know,
Traffic
controls
controller.
the traffic controller, yeah. So I know the stress levels is hard.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Turnover typically is 3 to 5 years. And we are lucky, we have some that are in 20, even up to 30, 35.
Yeah.
But they work for you two guys too, to figure that out.
Some people handle stress.
That's a stress level there, obviously. Somebody's got to give you a hard time.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You have any comments you want to make? Just
No, sir. We're fine. Thank you.
appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Any other general things that I can answer today versus the specific departments?
See, just to make sure, just let me
No,
see.
I might have to get, since I didn't prep for them, I may have to get back to you.
What's that?
You have a contingency other on,
Yeah.
hold on a second, I'll tell you what it is.
Here. Here.
What's in there?
I got an extra copy. Take that.
Well, I got one.
Oh, you got one? Okay.
Sorry.
This person. Organized person that sent them in word and stuff in it.
You have a contingency other under contingency and reserves. There's a contingency, there's transfer to airport, transfer to L&B, Y&C, and then there's a contingency / other, which is 500,000.
And that has historically been the account, so I didn't bring it up with me, but a lot of times we come to council and say, hey, we need salary changes at the sheriff's office for X, Y, and Z reason. So we take the additional money out of contingency other. When we did the $50,000 for the grant match for the new airline in fiscal
Oh, right.
25,
Yeah.
that $50,000 has been reserved out of that contingency other. We typically come to council and ask for it to come out of fund balance when we're doing a capital type item, when we're doing a potentially operating type item, and if we have the money available, we take it out of contingency other. $500,000 is the same amount that was there, I believe, last year. I believe we budgeted the year before $1 million in '24, didn't end up spending it all. But again, it is the only way for us to spend that line item is to come to council for a budget amendment to put it into the department that needs it. So it is not something that we post expenses directly to. Council has to approve the spending of the money in that line item.
In that same section, it's 2025 actual is 0 right now, but you say the projection is 486,000, something we've approved that I'm just.
Well,
not
what
into.
happens is that you don't actually spend it out of here. So if you, I got to get to 46. I'm not in there at this moment. Give me one
Tell you
second.
what, I don't want to drag this out.
That's okay. It's, I just need to look at this one number to make sure I'm stating the right number. So if you look, the number says $500,000 original budget. Revised budget is $320,000. We have transferred $180,000 to other accounts to make that spending. It will be rare that we spend money out of this specific line. We will spend the money out of the sheriff's department for their additional salaries. So we will ask council, the budget amendments that we come to you says, requesting a decrease to contingency other of $20,000 and an increase to salaries at the sheriff's office. A decrease of $50,000 for a grant, a grant match, and a increase to transfer to grant fund. That's how, so it will be rare that we will have spending out of that actual line item. The way you tell that we've actually spent anything is that the revised number went down from the original budget.
When you say the revised number,
So the revised number is one that you see in the munis detail on page 86.
okay. Outside of that, the only other thing I would remind you of is that I think we do need, I know the health department isn't here yet, but we do need an itemization from the health department. I think I've asked Ms. Hurley to get that on their capital requests. I think that's exorbitantly high. We've discussed that before, that 2.75 million. The other thing is the cannabis sales, the local management board. There was one notation in here in reference to cannabis. It was just listed cannabis sales, like I have page 53 on the PDF. Where you have other local taxes, et cetera, et cetera. I guess it's revenue, but this is under admission and amusement, and then it's cannabis sales and use tax. The only reason I'm asking is because I had trouble really finding out where there was any reference to cannabis sales.
So there is
with the
very
local
little of the
management board.
cannabis money that is actually drops to the general fund bottom line. Most of it is restricted funding, and when council is approving the spending of it at these other entities, we're spending it out of the grant fund. So we receive the money, we set it up as an unearned revenue until we have an actual project or use for it. Because most of the money that we get for cannabis is got a restriction on it, and we do not have the ability to spend it on whatever we want. So there will be very little that actually shows up, if any, because it's such a variable number, and it's still
So it's treated differently than the Children's Cabinet Interagency Fund, the Home Visiting Enough Act Capacity Building Grant, the Drug-Free Communities. There are 5 or 6 different grants that are issued to the local management board that are in here, but not cannabis.
So cannabis does not go through the local management board because it goes through the grant fund. It goes through, I think, Fund 02, 03.
Is that purchasing? Because where does it
No,
go?
it's a separate fund. It's a
Okay.
grant fund that we.
Is that in the budget?
So when council is adopting the budget, they're adopting the grant listing,
Okay.
Exhibit D. Those funds that we get, in most instances, are in a separate fund that is not an individual budgeted fund. You're budgeting for us to spend these grants. When we come to council to award the cannabis funding, we're asking you to award it, and we then we put it in. So we're asking you to basically appropriate and spend it out of the grant fund, not out of the LMB fund.
Does that require possibly an Exhibit F, or excuse me, an Exhibit G? Because I feel really, there's a lot of money coming out of there. There's a lot of money that's going to be cycled through it, and a lot more in the next few years. And it's kind of strange that he's just sitting out there and there's no documentation for it here.
I can look into it at this moment for fiscal '26. I think, again, council is appropriating those funds. We are not spending them without council's knowledge.
Well, I get it, 100%.
But I can look at, again, we're not, Exhibit D is telling council what grants we think we're going to get in the door, and then what grants then we think we're going to spend. And those are not spent through LMB, they're not spent through the funds that you see, they are spent in the grant fund. And
Just wondering if there's another way we should do it so that it's reflected in.
I don't think it is not considered a budgeted fund. The budget that you're adopting is the budget when you are awarding the grant.
You know what I'm curious about, right?
Yeah, I won't have an answer before we strike this budget.
Yeah, we can live with that. Just, I think it's not going away. It's going to be here forever, and it's going to pretty soon, it may even be bigger than our budget. You never know. Selling a lot of marijuana out there.
So, anyways.
Since he brought that up, I thought when we voted for L&B to manage the funds.
So they manage the process for application, and they manage the awarding of the grant and making sure it's being spent the way it's supposed to be. But that is actually, I believe, being spent through Fund 02. I would have to go and look, but I will verify.
Yeah, because I thought, why would you even have to deal with it?
Well, LMB is a budgeted fund. And
Yeah, and why wouldn't it be in their budget?
because
She just explained that.
so that
I heard her, but I just didn't
I didn't
see
either.
why.
I'm sorry. I just,
so that is the way we have, because it is.
You don't have to do that.
Because typically, we're just awarding a dollar amount to a location, and they're doing the management of it.
Okay, I got you.
So yes, LMB has to do some reporting and monitoring of it, but they're not the ones who are actually pulling off the program. The LMB fund, they're pulling off the program associated with that grant dollar.
Okay.
Versus awarding money to Rec and Parks for them to do something out at one of the parks. They're managing those funds. LMB took the application, read the application, evaluated the application, came to council and said, this is an application that meets all the requirements, we ask you to approve it. And then they will do some overall reporting associated with it, but they won't manage the funds.
That's why you're there and I'm sitting here. You're good.
Else? No? Any other? Yes, Angie?
You had asked about an organizational chart for EMS because of the new position. And I think that there was before, there was some other talk about organizational charts for changes in other departments. Will you be giving organizational charts for all the departments that had position changes on Exhibit E or just EMS?
I can provide them for each one if council is interested.
So, do you have any questions? Okay. All right, thank you all very much. Cheryl, it's good
Yep.
to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
All right, fam.
afternoon.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
I'm going to bed.
Dragon. Entertain motion to adjourn. So moved. Second.
Second.